Imagine three travelers, lost in a vast, dark desert. The first has no light and no guide. They simply wander in circles, exhausted and afraid. The second has no light of their own, but has the wisdom to hold on to the cloak of a third traveler, one who carries a radiant lantern. In a simple, powerful metaphor, the 13th century sage Rumi tells us these three travelers represent every person alive. The question is, which one are you? This isn't an abstract philosophical puzzle. It is an invitation to a profound and deeply personal inquiry. The desert is not some ancient landscape. It is the landscape of our modern lives. It is the vast, overwhelming wilderness of information without wisdom, of connection without intimacy, of ambition without purpose. It is the quiet anxiety that hums beneath the surface of our days, the feeling of being perpetually in motion, yet arriving nowhere. We wander through the endless scroll, the 24-hour news cycle, the relentless demands of an economy built on our distraction, and we wonder why we feel so exhausted, so spiritually parched, so lost in the dark. The beauty of Rumi's wisdom is that he does not judge the wanderer. He simply offers a map. He was not merely a poet of exquisite verses. He was a cartographer of the human soul. He understood that our feelings of confusion are not a sign that we are broken, but a sign that we are simply unaware of our location on a much grander journey. He tells us there are hidden ladders in this world, ladders of consciousness that stretch from the earth to the heavens, and that every single one of us is standing on a particular rung. So this journey we are about to embark upon is not a lecture. It is an act of discovery. We will use the timeless light of Rumi's teachings to illuminate our own inner landscape. We will seek to understand the nature of the three travelers, not as distant characters in a story, but as aspects of ourselves. By the end of our time together, the promise is not that you will have all the answers, but that you will hold a compass that can guide you out of the circles of confusion and onto the path of purpose, clarity, and profound inner peace. The question is not a judgment, but a key. So let us ask it again, with gentle curiosity. Which traveler are you, right now, in this moment? The defining characteristic of the spiritual child has nothing to do with chronological age. One can be 80 years old and still be governed by the soul of a child. The spiritual child is one who is ruled by the lower self, the conditioned ego. Their life is a constant reaction to the external world. Their peace is dependent on praise. Their anxiety is triggered by criticism. Their desires are insatiable, chasing one fleeting pleasure after another, like a child grasping for shiny objects, only to discard them moments later. Rumi states it with breathtaking clarity. Most people are children, except for the one intoxicated with God. No one is mature, except for the one who has escaped from their own desires. This is a startling diagnosis of our modern condition. The attention economy, which governs so much of our digital lives, is built entirely on catering to and profiting from the spiritual child within us. It is designed to trigger our most basic impulses, our need for validation, our fear of missing out, our craving for novelty and distraction. The endless scroll, the algorithmically perfected feed, the notifications that pull at our awareness. They are the lullabies and toys that keep the inner child occupied, while our deeper potential for presence, focus, and connection atrophies. The persistent low-grade anxiety and dissatisfaction that so many of us feel is the natural consequence of a life lived in service to these fleeting childish whims of the ego. We are chasing ghosts and wondering why we feel so empty. In stark contrast stands the spiritual adult, or the sage. This is not a person who has eradicated desire or who is free from the challenges of life. That is a common and unhelpful misconception. Rather, the spiritual adult is one who is no longer a slave to their own impulses. They have cultivated a center of gravity within themselves. Their peace is not a fragile thing, dependent on the weather of external circumstances, but a deep, resilient wellspring within. They can feel the pull of desire, the sting of criticism, or the temptation of distraction, but these things no longer dictate their actions. There is a space between the stimulus and their response, and in that space lies their freedom and their power. This state is remarkably similar to what the ancient Stoic philosophers called apatheia. This term is often mistranslated as apathy, but it means something far more profound, a state of being free from the control of disturbing passions. It is not an emotional numbness, but a radiant tranquility that arises from aligning one's life with a deeper truth. For the Stoic, this was aligning with cosmic reason, or logos. For Rumi, it was aligning with the divine source of all being, with love itself. The spiritual adult has begun the work of polishing the mirror of their heart so that it no longer reflects the chaotic whims of the world, but the serene light of the eternal. This distinction between the child and the sage is the foundational landscape of our inner world. Understanding it is the first step on the ladder. It allows us to look at our own behaviors with compassion and honesty. When we find ourselves endlessly scrolling, seeking validation, or lashing out in anger, we can recognize it not as a personal failing, but as the voice of the spiritual child within us, asking for attention. And in that moment of recognition, we create the possibility of choosing a different response, the response of the sage who resides within us, waiting to be cultivated. This is the beginning of the ascent. It is the moment we stop wandering aimlessly and begin to consciously climb the ladder of our own being. Now let us return to our three travelers in the desert, for they represent the most crucial aspect of this journey, the role of the mind, the intellect, and the inner light that guides us.
Rumi understood that the most important tool we have for navigating this dark and often confusing world is the light of our own awareness. But he cautions, these lights are not all the same. He says, know well that minds are ranked in degrees, from the earth all the way to the heavens. Within this infinite spectrum of intellectual and spiritual light, he identifies three primary archetypes embodied by our three travelers. By understanding them, we can diagnose our own spiritual condition with astonishing precision. The first traveler is the blind wanderer. This is the one who is completely lost in the dark. They have no lantern of their own, and in their pride or ignorance, they refuse to follow a guide. This represents the state of the ego in its most absolute form. The blind wanderer is trapped in the prison of their own limited perceptions, believing their small cage to be the entire universe. In the modern world, this state manifests in many forms. It can be the dogmatic cynic, who insists that there is no reality beyond what can be measured and quantified, dismissing millennia of human spiritual inquiry as delusion. It can be the hardened ideologue, so convinced of their own righteousness that they are blind to the humanity of those who disagree. But most commonly, and perhaps most tragically, it is the person trapped in the relentless looping narrative of their own anxious mind. In neuroscience, this is known as the default mode network, the part of the brain that is active when we are not focused on a specific task. It is the source of our daydreams, our worries, our endless commentary about ourselves and our lives. For the blind wanderer, this network runs wild. Their mind is a storm of self-referential thoughts. What do they think of me? Did I say the right thing? What if I fail? They wander in circles in the desert of their own mind, exhausted by the ceaseless noise, completely unaware that they are the source of their own darkness. They believe they are thinking, but they are merely being thought by their own conditioning. Their tragedy is not that they are in the dark, but that they have mistaken the darkness for the entirety of reality. The second traveler represents a profound leap in consciousness. This is the wise follower. This traveler also has no light of their own. The desert is just as dark for them as it is for the blind wanderer. but they possess one crucial saving grace: humility. The wise follower understands and accepts their own limitation. They have uttered the most powerful words in any spiritual vocabulary: "I do not know." This admission is not a sign of weakness, but the very beginning of true strength. It is the cracking open of the ego's shell, allowing a greater wisdom to enter. Because they are not blinded by the arrogance of false certainty, the wise follower is able to recognize light when they see it. Their intelligence lies not in generating their own answers, but in their capacity to discern a true and trustworthy guide. They see the third traveler with the radiant lantern, and they have the wisdom to reach out and hold on to their cloak. They borrow another's sight to navigate the darkness. This archetype speaks directly to the power of mentorship, tradition, and sacred community, concepts our hyper-individualistic culture often devalues. We are taught to think for ourselves and to be self-made, but Rumi suggests that the highest intelligence, at a certain stage, is to recognize who is worthy of being followed. This could be a living teacher, a spiritual guide, or the timeless wisdom contained in sacred texts and traditions. It is the student who finds a master, the patient who trusts a doctor, the seeker who immerses themselves in a path that has been walked by sages for centuries.
This act of following is an act of profound intelligence. It requires what modern psychologists call emotional intelligence and discernment. The wise follower must be able to distinguish the true lantern from the flickering mirage, the authentic guide from the charismatic charlatan. This is a skill of the heart, a deep, intuitive resonance that recognizes truth. As Socrates famously declared, the beginning of wisdom is the recognition of one's own ignorance. The wise follower embodies this principle. They may not yet have their own light, but by walking in the light of another, they are steadily moving out of the desert and toward the dawn. Finally, we arrive at the third traveler, the most luminous and inspiring of the archetypes, the luminous guide. This is the one who carries their own lantern. Their light shines from within, illuminating the path not only for themselves, but for all who are wise enough to follow. This is the state of the fully realized human being, the sage, the saint, the complete soul. What is this inner lantern? It is not mere intellectual brilliance or encyclopedic knowledge. We all know people who are incredibly clever, yet lack fundamental wisdom, kindness, or peace. The lantern Rumi speaks of is the light of the awakened heart. In Sufi terminology, this is the qalb, which is not just the physical organ, but the seat of spiritual perception, the inner eye. It is a form of knowing that transcends logic and reason. It is a direct, intuitive participation in the truth of being. Modern science is beginning to catch up to this ancient wisdom. Research into heart-brain coherence, conducted by institutions like the Heart Math Institute, has shown that the heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. When a person is in a state of love, gratitude, or compassion, their heart rhythms become smooth and coherent, which in turn shifts the brain into a more creative, intuitive, and peaceful state of functioning. This is a scientific description of the lantern being lit. When the frantic noise of the ego mind, the default mode network, is quieted through practices like meditation, contemplation, and prayer, a deeper intelligence emerges. This is the inner guide. The luminous guide lives in a state that psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called flow, a state of complete absorption where the self seems to disappear and action becomes effortless and perfect. They have polished the mirror of their heart so thoroughly that it perfectly reflects the light of the divine. They no longer see the world through the distorted lens of their fears and desires, but see things as they truly are, imbued with a sacred presence. And, as the source texts of this tradition remind us, the ultimate luminous guides in human history are the prophets. They are described as the most perfect mirrors, whose inner lanterns are not just lit by their own effort, but are a direct reflection of the cosmic, divine sun. Their teachings, therefore, become a vessel of safety and guidance for all of humanity. When Rumi references the story of Noah, he is invoking this very idea. The prophet's wisdom is like an ark, a vessel of timeless truth that can carry humanity safely through the chaotic floods of ignorance and confusion. The Luminous Guide offers not just a path, but a sanctuary. They become the way. Their very presence is a light that dispels the darkness, reminding us of the potential that lies sleeping within our own hearts. Now, let us bring this ancient parable out of the realm of story and into the living reality of your own heart. Let the soft, warm light of these teachings illuminate your own inner world. This is not a moment for judgment or analysis, but for gentle, honest reflection. Find a comfortable posture. Allow your body to settle. Take a slow, deep breath in, and as you exhale, release the noise and hurry of your day. Breathe in again, drawing in stillness, and breathe out, letting go of the need to figure anything out. Just be present, here, now. Let us first call to mind the image of the blind wanderer, lost in the dark desert. With gentle curiosity, ask yourself, in what areas of my life do I feel like I am wandering in circles? Where do I feel most lost, most confused, most caught in the grip of anxiety? Perhaps it is in a relationship, where the same arguments repeat themselves endlessly. Perhaps it is in your career, where you feel a lack of purpose, simply going through the motions. Or perhaps it is within your own mind, in the recurring loops of worry, self-criticism, or fear about the future. Do not judge what arises. Simply notice it. See these patterns not as who you are, but as the footsteps of the wanderer. This is the part of you that is lost in the darkness of conditioning, believing its small circle to be the whole world. Acknowledge this part of you with compassion. It is doing its best with the awareness it has. Simply seeing it clearly is the first step toward freedom. Now shift your awareness to the wise follower. This is the part of you that knows it doesn't have all the answers. It is the part of you that is humble, open, and teachable. Consider your life right now. Is there a source of light, a source of wisdom that you have been ignoring? It may not be a person. It could be a book that has been sitting on your shelf unread. It could be the practice of meditation or prayer that you keep telling yourself you'll start tomorrow. It could be the quiet, intuitive nudges of your own heart that you so often dismiss as impractical. It could be the wisdom of nature, inviting you to simply be still and listen. What would it feel like to embody the wise follower? What would it feel like to have the courage to say, I need help. I need guidance? What would it feel like to trust that small, persistent feeling that points you toward something greater than your current understanding? Breathe into that possibility. The wisdom is not in having the light, but in being willing to walk toward it. Finally, let us contemplate the luminous guide, the traveler with the inner lantern. This is not some distant, unattainable ideal. It is the deepest truth of who you are. It is your divine spark, your higher self, the radiant core of your being that is never lost, never broken, and never in the dark. Can you recall a moment in your life, however brief, when you tasted this reality? A moment of profound peace in nature? A moment of selfless love for another person? A moment of creative flow where time seemed to disappear? A moment of sudden, unshakable clarity? These are not random accidents.
These are moments when the clouds of the ego parted and the sun of your true nature shone through. That light is always there. The spiritual path is not about creating this light, but about clearing away the dust, the mud and the grime that has accumulated on the lens of your own heart.
Hold the memory of that light within you. Feel its warmth. Know that this is your true home, this radiant peace, this deep knowing, this boundless love. This is your essence. The journey is simply the path of returning to what you already are. Take one more deep breath, and as you exhale, carry this awareness with you. You are the desert. You are the darkness, but you are also the three travelers. You have within you the potential to be lost, the wisdom to follow, and the capacity to shine. We began our journey together in a dark desert, a metaphor for the confusion and disconnection of our modern world. We met three travelers, each representing a fundamental state of human consciousness. The blind wanderer, trapped in the loops of their own ego. The wise follower, whose humility allows them to be guided by a greater light. And the luminous guide, who has uncovered the radiant lantern of their own awakened heart. The profound and liberating message from Rumi is this: these are not fixed identities, they are stages on a journey. To feel lost is not a final destination, it is simply a location on the soul's map. The entire purpose of the spiritual path is to facilitate the movement from one stage to the next, to help the wanderer recognize their own blindness, to inspire them to become a follower, and to guide the follower on the path to uncovering their own inner light. This is not a journey of condemnation, but of compassion. We all have moments of being the blind wanderer, lost in our fears and anxieties. The key is to recognize it without judgment. We all have the capacity to be the wise follower, to seek guidance and to trust a wisdom greater than our own. The key is to cultivate humility. And deep within every one of us, awaiting its unveiling, is the luminous guide. The key is to remember it is there, and to undertake the patient, sacred work of polishing the mirror of the heart until its light can shine freely. You are not being asked to become something you are not. You are being invited to return to the magnificent truth of what you have always been. The desert is vast, and the night can feel dark and long, but you were born with a sun hidden in your chest. The journey isn't about finding a path on the ground, it's about becoming the path, becoming the light. It's about remembering that the source of all warmth, all clarity, and all love is not somewhere out there in the distance. It has been within you, all along. The journey is simply the brave and beautiful act of coming home to yourself.